Welcome to Blood Brothers Revision Act 2 Plot and Characters. And again, if you feel very confident with plot and characters, you might want to miss out on this particular short video and go on to some of the following ones. So in this particular video I'm going to be looking at plot and characters basic revision for Act 2 of Blood Brothers. Blood Brothers starts Act 2 in a new environment. So we are now in the new town. Both families have now moved out of Liverpool, or an area which is like Liverpool, never particularly named. And the new town is called Skelmersdale, which I believe is spelt that way, Skelmersdale. And this is kind of like a new start. New towns were built as a way of getting people moving out of the slum and very depressed areas of main cities, big cities like Liverpool and Manchester, etc., around about in the 60s and 70s. So it was part of a bigger programme of creating new towns. So the Lyons family have been established in their nice middle class home quite well up until this point. So they've been living there, and little known to Mrs. Lyons, the Johnson family are about to do exactly the same thing. So we see that the life of the Lyons, between Edward in particular, he is going to his private education, his public school. He is, however, showing more and more signs of being a bit like Mickey, showing that the nature that he's got is that of the family he was born from rather than where he's been living. So it's the nature-nurture kind of debate which we'll talk about in another one of these. So private education, but he's getting into trouble. And we see him getting into trouble over swearing, and also in school refusing to give up the locket that was given to him as a reminder before they left by Mrs. Johnson. So he doesn't want to give up his locket. That gets him into trouble at home because Mrs. Lyons sees this for the first time. The photo in particular is particularly upsetting for her. Meanwhile, the Johnsons have now moved out. We see that Sammy and Mickey are still living with their mother. The others, mainly the girls, have moved on, families of their own. This state school that Mickey is going to, Mickey is also getting into trouble. The similarities between the boys over this are deliberately put together in this kind of way. So we see children turning out to be very similar to each other. We also see that Linda is here. Linda gets very protective whenever Mickey gets into trouble. So she's still protective of Mickey. She tells him and us that she loves him. Mickey is unable to express the feelings that he has, so largely doesn't. Boys get back together again, so they meet up again. And through this time, they are developing into adulthood, so they're becoming adults. And we see some of the comedy of the sex films that they go to see, etc. So they're different from their backgrounds and their education, but they have similarities in their natures because they both get into trouble. And their friendship kind of brings them back together again. around about the time that they go to see the sex films that Mrs. Lyons follows Edward. Now, trailing and following your child is kind of a weird thing to do, but she follows Edward and he goes to Mrs. J's house. And this makes her more anxious. So we talked in Act 1 that she has kind of a mental illness, and this comes out here again, this great anxiety. So she goes to see Mrs. Johnson. She again offers her money, but this time Mrs. Johnson says no. In Act 1, when she was offered money, she took it. She needed it. So she offers money, that's rejected. And so then Mrs. L attacks with a knife on Mrs. Johnson. So we know that Mrs. Lyons is really suffering, and what's making her suffer is her obsessive nature. She doesn't feel like his real mother, she says, and that makes her mentally unstable. The natural progress for Edward is to go to university. So he completes his A-levels, he goes to university, and when he comes back at Christmas, the first year, they meet up again. Now, he's had quite an interesting time going off to university, coming back, he's got money, he's looking forward to parties and all of that kind of thing. Mickey's life is now very different. So Mickey has had to, from education, Mickey got a down and out job, poorly paid. He's miserable, he hates it, not much to do, not really great money around in order to be able to do things that are enjoyable. He's having problems finding out the courage to tell Linda how he feels about her. And eventually he does get together with Linda. But it's with Edward's encouragement that he speaks to Linda. Okay. Now the result of that, as they are growing apart here, Linda becomes pregnant. They get married. They have to live with Mrs. Johnson. They can't afford a place of their own. So life for Mickey is a little bit miserable, really. And he finds then that he is made redundant. He is now unemployed, no job, no money, no prospects. Now you can probably imagine that he seems to think that anything is better than living like this. So Sammy encourages him to be a lookout for a robbery that Sammy is planning. And of course that robbery goes wrong. So Mickey is arrested and imprisoned. When he comes out of prison, Mickey is depressed. He's on tablets, medication, he behaves differently. Life isn't treating him very well at all. Some of that is because he has got a new home and a new job, but not because he's earned them. He realises it's because Edward has managed to fix that up. And that's Edward's job. Once he finishes university, Edward gets a good job at the council. And through that job at the council, he is able to organise this for Mickey. Realising how much he has loved Linda, he tells her that. And she has to tell him that actually she's married and she's going to have a baby. When he gets this job at the council, he starts an affair with Linda. And it's that affair which then sees things going really badly. So at this stage, Mickey sees them together. And you can imagine how Mickey feels about that, particularly as Edward is his best friend, and you don't expect friends to behave in that kind of way. In his anger, Mickey gets Sammy's gun. That's Sammy's real gun. And he goes to shoot Edward. Remember, Mickey is on tablets for his depression, and he's just felt betrayed by his best friend and his wife. So he goes to shoot Edward. When he gets to the council, he goes to the council chamber where he knows Edward is working, where he will be. But he can't do it. The family have joined round by that stage, they're all kind of there. Accidentally, he shoots Edward, and Edward dies. So the death that we hear about at the very beginning of the play works out here. The little problem that we have here is Mrs. Lyons. She is the one who tells Mickey and Edward they're twins. And that's partly why he can't do it. But the tragedy is the bad things are still going to happen. So Mickey accidentally shoots Edward, who dies. And then, of course, the police, faced with an armed killer, the police shoot Mickey. Mrs. Lyons is an interesting character here. She kind of starts the problem off by manipulating Mrs. Johnson into giving up one of the twins because she is childless and desperate, isn't really wanting to help Mrs. Johnson out. It's her own desire for a child that drives her to do that. And here it's her mental illness and her anxiousness which makes her tell the twins that they are twins. And the story that she made up, the myth she made up, that twins parted at birth should never be introduced to each other, comes true. It comes true accidentally, but even so, at the death of these two, that we come full circle, and the chorus's opening speeches have now been played out in front of us. Okay, so that is Act 2. I hope some of that made sense. Thank you for listening.